This is my first international award-winning short documentary film on a young and resilient kayaker from Meghalaya that I made using basically just one camera, couple of lenses, a cheap budget mic, and a tiny LED light that I had with me. And honestly, before making this documentary, I really felt like I don't have all the resources, all the expensive equipment, and the ability to plan out such a piece of film. But after making this film, I realized that a lot of the important work happens before you even press record. So if you're there like me, sitting with minimal equipment and the enthusiasm to create something amazing, then this video is for you. This is exactly how I prepared my zero budget documentary film as a solo filmmaker. To make a good documentary, the first thing you need is a story. And what makes a good story? Cinematic visuals, cool lighting, that one gear that you recently saw on a YouTube review, or that one LUT that you're certain will make a documentary look like a Netflix piece? Spoiler alert, none of these. What you actually need is strong conflict. My film is not about two people fighting, you may say. So what is conflict? Conflict is the emotional tension that your film is based around. Or in simpler terms, your character wants to achieve something, but there is something that gets in the way of them achieving it. Conflict doesn't always have to be loud and dramatic.
25 years. Don't you think you get a little psychotic?
It can be subtle while still heavily impacting the character. Before I planned my shoot, I wrote down the conflict in very simple terms. So let me now show you what the conflict of my film looks like. I plan everything in this application called Obsidian. It's a free to use platform without any restrictions, and it's extremely powerful for such kind of pre-production planning. So the conflict is, earlier both Bishnu and Indra, two brothers, kayaked together in the pursuit of becoming good athletes and representing their country in the future. But one of the two had to discontinue to look after the family's livestock. So this is the central conflict around which the film revolves. So I take the film from here and show their journeys. And to find out what happened, I'll leave a link in the description so you can watch the film and see for yourself. You may also see that there is this link here, what is conflict. So here is where I have done some of my research. If I click on that, it takes me to this page where I've done my own research on the definition of conflict and why is it important to a story and what happens if there is no conflict. So let me know if you would like a dedicated video on how I use this application to plan almost everything when it comes to pre-production. Before thinking about camera, gear, transitions, music, put down the conflicts on paper in very simple terms, and trust me, you'll thank yourself later for it. So once you're done with this first step, let's move to the second step. So while trying to figure out the conflict for my documentary, I started researching and binge watching my favorite documentary films. And the key word here is short documentary films, not feature films, because 2-hour-long feature documentaries have a completely different story structure as opposed to short documentaries. So I would watch these documentaries, take notes on what was done well, what could have been improved, and most importantly, what I can implement in my own films. Let me now take you through one of the short documentaries that I analyzed. It's called Finn's Law. You can find it on YouTube. And after the film was completed, I wrote down a short synopsis as to what the film was about. I then noted how they put the story structure together in the beginning, middle, and the end. And I also took notes on the cinematography ideas that I liked, using close-ups, using some interesting POV shots, and I also jotted down some aspects that could have been done better by the cinematographer, in my opinion, so that later on it helps me improve my cinematography. Then I also took some notes on editing, how they put the entire story together, direction, and you get the point. And after analyzing dozens of such documentaries, I realized that good films are actually very simple. They're built on strong characters, emotional tension, natural moments, and most important of all, clarity. I downloaded this film by Mark Bourne, brought it into my editing software, used scene detection to chop it up into pieces and analyze each shot separately, how it leads into the other shot, where the music comes, and how it is all put together so beautifully. So I urge you to download your favorite documentary film, bring it into your editing software, and analyze it. It'll really bring new insights that you'll be able to implement in your own films. So, after analyzing these films and getting a better understanding of how pros approach their craft, I started jotting down the questions that I want to ask my characters. So, I kept the interview short, conversational, and very intentional so that they don't feel anxious about, this camera that is staring right into their face, which makes a person like me who spends a lot of time with cameras also feel anxious and nervous. Have a look at my set of questions that I prepared for my characters. So, this is a protagonist, Indra. I prepared a total of 14 questions. Not that I just asked him these 14 questions, but I also followed up with why, where, how for certain questions. So you can see the questions are very simple and straightforward. What does kayaking mean to you? What's your goal in life? Do you feel any pressure to make kayaking a success? What kind of pressure? Questions like these. And similarly for all the other characters. You can pause and read if you'd like to. And at the end, I also asked a couple of questions to myself, which is what do I want the audience to feel once they're done watching the film? A lot of people came back and told me that they really feel humbled watching this film, and others felt really optimistic for his future. It is also not necessary to take hours and hours to complete these interviews thinking that the more you talk to them about it, the better answers you'll be getting. That is not always the case, and in fact they may start becoming more anxious and more nervous. I had this Sony A6400 at hand with which I decided to shoot the film as if I had any other choice. And I paired it up with this trusty Sigma 18 to 50 f2.8. It's a fantastic, compact, sharp, and very lightweight lens. And along with this lightweight body, it becomes a very portable rig, if I may call it a rig. Almost 98% of the film was shot using just this body and lens, along with a mic, of course, for the interviews. And for some close ups of the action in the water, I needed a tight lens, so I used my old Nikon 70 to 300 DSLR lens, adapted it to my Sony, and manual focused with it. And when you're broke, any lens becomes cinematic, even if you have to manually focus with it. And for audio, I used a very cheap lav mic, wired lav mic that I plugged straight into the camera. And fortunately, my friend also lent me one of his shotgun mics that I was able to mount on top of my camera and get good or pretty decent ambient audio. And if you're looking to up your audio game, I would highly recommend the Boya BY M1 lav mic and the Boya BY MM1 shotgun mic. These are very affordable mics and will give you a good step up as compared to your inbuilt camera mics. I feel most beginners obsess over having good equipment before they can shoot anything. What I realized is you don't need expensive equipment or top end gear to shoot something amazing. Now look at this setup. If you ask any pro, no one will consider this to be a serious setup. APS-C body, single lens, no ND filter. I mean, who will consider this to be a good setup? And I've been there too. I felt like I need to have the best full frame cameras, good lenses, good mics, ND filters, top handles and whatnot. But I worked with what I had, I used scarcity to my advantage and ended up making this film. Turns out preparation is cheaper than buying a new lens or a new camera body every 6 months. I guess that's why you're here watching this video. I knew I couldn't afford big lighting setups, so I planned my shoot around natural light. I knew I didn't have a crew with me, so I leveraged this minimalist setup to my advantage, not having to switch lenses or rig up or rig down my camera body from time to time was really an advantage for me. So limitations force clarity, and clarity is one of the major contributors to making a good film. Almost every video that you watch on YouTube about pre-production will emphasize on scripting and shot listing, which I feel is completely fair, but I personally am not a big fan of scripting and shot listing for my documentaries. Why? Because each location is unique and I really love to have the action fold out in front of me and capture it in the best way possible, staying in the moment. instead of asking my character to wait, go through my shot list, and then tell him to resume the action and then resume with my shots. It doesn't really make sense to me, nor is it my style. And I don't have anything against those who like to direct their character from time to time and get those cool looking shots. By the way, if you're not aware, that is exactly what most of your high end documentaries do. They have the locations planned out, what they'll wear, what they'll say, how they'll move. So I really like to distance myself from the character in that sense, let him continue with the action that he's doing, and I decide to shoot it the way I want without having to interrupt him or direct him in any shape or form. So, this requires a lot of impromptu shooting and quick thinking and decision making. And if you're not really comfortable with that, maybe you need more practice. Go out there, shoot things, and with time, you will start to get an idea as to how you should cover a scene and what shots will make sense. So, having some basic cinematography knowledge will be of great help. Using wide shots to establish the scene, using mid close ups or mid shots to show the character doing their action, and close up shots to focus on the detail of the action or their expression. And once you learn these, you'll automatically start crafting beautiful scenes. During pre production, if you carefully study good films and see what builds good scenes, it'll automatically store into your subconscious memory. And once you're there on set, on the spot, shooting, these things will automatically start coming out and you'll automatically start to find these angles that look good. If you're forgetful like me, so what I do is I take the frames from these films that I like, store it into a place, and before I go out to shoot, I quickly look through these frames so that they're consciously in my head, and while shooting I can take inspiration from them and give it my own twist to build a unique shot or a unique scene. When it comes to scheduling, it is really important to clarify with your character how many days you'll be spending with them. For the purpose of this film, I had the privilege to stay very close to where the character was living. So, over a period of 7 days, I was able to capture and gather all the material that I needed. Given a shorter span of time, it would have still been possible, but the schedule would have been much more hectic. As far as possible, I would recommend you to spend as much time as possible with your character, because that will help them become more acquainted with you and maybe even good friends, so that they are more comfortable on camera when you're interviewing them. This highly increases your chances of getting really good, authentic, and unfiltered moments from them. And this becomes more important, especially if they're shy or more introverted. Then it becomes difficult for them to open up and answer the questions that you're throwing at them. Looking back, there are a lot of things I wish I would have done differently, especially not being lazy to shoot a couple scenes that required more proactive participation on my part. I also wish I would have documented more of the closeness, the brotherhood between these two siblings, so that their separation would have much more gravity to it than it has now. Another thing that I decided in pre-production, that I will not make this mistake, is the same mistake that I ended up making: not shooting enough B-roll. We've all been there. We take B-roll shots and think, okay, this will suffice, this will be enough, but no amount of B-roll is ever enough. The more B-roll you have, the better it is during your edit to structure and shape the film. So I would encourage you to go ahead, try out things, make mistakes. Either you learn something meaningful or you just find a scene that doesn't work. There's nothing much to lose there. So after completing the pre-production, production, post-production, and screening of this film, what I realized is most of the output comes from good preparation, having clarity about your story and character. So if you're still waiting because you don't have the perfect setup, maybe this is your sign to start with what you already have. And let me know in the comments below if you want to see the post-production breakdown of this film.